Never bonk again. It's a tantalising prospect, isn't it? And one that Supersapiens claims can be a reality with its real-time glucose monitoring system. Glucose sensors are by no means a new invention. Diabetics have been using them for years, but the concept of using them to gain an advantage in sports is relatively new. We can expect to see, in fact we already are seeing, glucose sensors being used in a wide variety of disciplines, and despite them being banned by the UCI, we can still expect them to continue to make the headlines in cycling too. There are a few different parts to Supersapiens, the most obvious to the untrained eye being the version 0 energy band. In reality, for cyclists, this is the least important piece of the puzzle, and should really just be considered as an add-on to the system. The band itself costs just under £140 and provides a window into your body's real-time glucose levels. It's very similar in size and quality to a Fitbit or Garmin Vivo Smart 5. And I was very glad to see that Supersapiens has actually given the band the ability to tell the time, unlike some wrist-based tech, i.e. Wahoo. Battery life is average at best, and I could get a few days out of it before it needed charging using the included proprietary cable. In use, the band does its job, relaying live glucose levels. However, because of the Bluetooth limitations, it wasn't possible to pair the sensor to my phone, cycle computer and energy band all at the same time, and so for cycling, the band was often the first device to go. Personally, I wouldn't recommend the band to a pure cyclist. You can get all the same data and more from your phone and cycle computer, so unless you're also running and swimming, then it's unlikely to be necessary. The next part is the Abbott Libre Sense biosensor. These are purchased on a subscription basis at £130 per month. Not cheap then, but we'll get more into the value side of things in a minute. Despite its small size, this little thing will relay glucose levels via Bluetooth every minute of every day for up to 2 weeks at a time. It's also waterproof, which will be of added importance if you're a triathlete. The 35mm diameter biosensor houses a circuit board, battery, NFC chip, Bluetooth sensor and enough onboard memory for a claimed 8 hours of data. What that means is that you can be out of range from your phone or cycle computer for that length of time and not lose any data. Any missing data from the previous 8 hours or so can then be transferred via NFC by touching the phone against the sensor. In use, I could indeed get the full 2 weeks out of the sensor. It stops transmitting automatically after that, despite knocking it on quite a few door frames. It is surprising how close I must walk to objects. If further protection is required, then Supersapiens offers a performance patch which covers up the sides of the sensor for additional peace of mind. Arguably the biggest hurdle in cycling for Supersapiens is that this kind of technology was swiftly banned by the UCI, which claimed that it would make racing too robotic. Now, I got the chance to speak to David Lippman of Supersapiens, who did raise the question of how come power meters are allowed then, and well, I do have to agree with him on that one. Just last week, the UCI disqualified Kristen Faulkner from the women's Strade Bianchi after photos emerged of a Supersapiens sensor on her arm. Faulkner claims that the device was not transmitting data during the race. Either way, it appears the UCI is standing firm and we won't see continuous glucose monitors appearing in the World Tour anytime soon. It goes without saying that the vast majority of us don't race at this kind of level, so that won't be an issue for most. I've spent years trying to improve my own performance on the bike, and in a sport that is dominated by marginal gains, nutrition is not one of them. It's not even remotely marginal. The difference that fueling properly can make to your speed, ride enjoyment and training benefit is literally make or break. And so it's very surprising that up until now, there have been very few technological developments focusing on this metric. Supersapiens claims that its system can take the mystery out of fueling, and that athletes who are informed about their glucose levels and responses to different stimuli, i.e. food, can improve not only their race day performance, but also their recovery, preparation, and everyday training. Now, that's probably why we've seen them stuck to the arms of Jumbo-Visma during the entire off-season. With each biosensor, you also get an applicator, basically a stamp that you use on your upper arm. The process is extremely simple and takes a matter of minutes. Contrary to what I thought, the needle doesn't stay in your arm and rather just guides in the flexible filament, which needs to be just under the skin. For anyone who knows their biology, the filament detects the glucose levels in your interstitial fluid. That's a thin layer of fluid surrounding the cells just beneath your skin. Supersapiens says that the application is painless for over 90% of people, and I'm happy to report that I do fit into that category. In fact, you don't really feel it at all. The trouble is, by the time that the 2 weeks are up and you need to replace the sensor, you've forgotten all of that and stare at the needle all over again. My advice would be to not look at it and just get on with it. Even if you're okay with needles, it can be a daunting prospect to whack one into yourself. You could of course get someone else to do it for you, but once it's in, you'll wonder what all the fuss was about. Once in, the sensor can be paired with ease to your phone via the easy to navigate Supersapiens app. And then after a 1 hour warm-up period, you're good to go. As previously mentioned, as well as transmitting data to your smartphone, the biosensor can also transmit data to a cycle computer. Garmin's have been compatible for some time, but I've taken advantage of the recent inclusion of Wahoo compatibility and used the system with a Roam V2. The integration with Wahoo works well, but could do with a little refinement. For example, pairing the sensor involves a bit of going forwards and backwards between the Wahoo element and the Supersapiens apps. And then, once paired, it automatically adds itself as the first data field, which is not where I wanted it. Subsequently, it would revert back to this default, even after I'd changed it. A small bit irritating detail when heading out on rides. As I mentioned earlier, any data that isn't transferred straight to the phone can be gathered later using the NFC chip. But as I usually have my phone on me, I managed to collect data reliably for every single hour of the 6-week review period. The phone application is split into 4 sections. Measure, where you can see your live glucose levels as both a figure given in milligrams per deciliter, I think, a very small amount in graph form. Events, these are what Supersapiens calls any out of the ordinary glucose behaviour, including spikes, dips and physical activities, for example bike rides. I have events for every ride I did with the sensor on, with workout data imported from Training Peaks. For each ride, Supersapiens gives me a glucose score out of 100, the higher the better fueled I was for said ride. This is based on how much time I spent within my performance zone, which can be customised. Other events include rushes, these are glucose spikes. The next section is Learn, and it does exactly what it says on the tin. For the first 4 weeks, there are daily onboarding sessions to help guide you through the process. Each one takes roughly 3 to 5 minutes to read and digest, and is useful, clear and concise. The Education Hub is also accessed on this tab. This is a whole bank of videos, guides and relevant articles. It's safe to assume that if you have bought a Supersapiens subscription, then you are very interested in nerding out over nutrition, and these are perfect for people who are that way inclined. The final section, Profile, is where you pair sensors and devices such as your cycle computer. So each night I would study my day's glucose levels to see how they fluctuated, what food groups resulted in severe peaks and troughs, and how I could better manage my nutrition. The onboarding sessions in the Learn section of the app gave useful insights into the potential causes for spikes and suggested remedies. For example, walking after eating, shots of vinegar with food, and different forms of carbohydrates to try. After 3 or so weeks of using Supersapiens, I was much better at keeping my glucose levels steady. I'm far from qualified to speak on how that is beneficial, but most physicians are in agreement that glucose spikes are bad. The app automatically logs spikes, and you can then log both the cause and add notes such as what food you ate to monitor trends and patterns. David Lippman, Supersapiens' Director of Applied Science and Content, was keen to get across that Supersapiens is not just for during activities, it can help play a role in the preparation for rides as well. The food that you eat in the 4 hours or so before riding can have a huge impact on your performance, and Supersapiens helps identify what works for you. And it only took a few days for me to time my porridge intake perfectly, so I was heading out fully fueled. I would argue that this is one area that a bit of research combined with trial and error would also be a viable method. But this isn't the only area that Supersapiens can be used. I found both positives and negatives when riding with the biosensor live streaming to my cycle computer. We'll start with the negatives. Towards the end of the onboarding period, you will look at personally tailoring your performance zone. As default, this is set to between 110 and 180 milligrams. And I think the process for setting this up could do with some work. It basically involves trial and error and a rate of perceived exertion. You then check to see what your glucose levels were when you felt good and avoid glucose levels when you felt worse for wear. Supersapiens' strapline is never bonk again. Now, rest assured, it is still very possible to bonk whilst using this device. Even after setting up my performance zones accurately, I found that by the time the number started dropping, it was almost always too late to start eating. Therefore, you still need to be proactive with your nutrition and start eating before you think you need it. Or indeed, before the arrow next to your glucose level begins pointing downwards. On the plus side, the area that was the highlight for me was monitoring the response to different on-bike nutrition. As a cycling journalist, I'm lucky enough to try a huge variety of foods to find out what works best for me. This could cost a small fortune for the average consumer. But even with access to all these products, I was still munching down plenty of cheap store-bought cereal bars. Something that, after seeing the short, sharp spikes that they caused, I won't be continuing. Jelly staying. Even if jelly has no positive impact on my performance, I'm still eating jelly on rides. Supersapiens also confirmed that my positive experience of SIS beta fuel was indeed scientific and not just a placebo. During training, this kind of information is invaluable to endurance athletes. It allows riders to find foods and carb sources that work best for them and hence improve their performance. While the Supersapiens system is very good, you shouldn't expect this to be some quick fix to all your nutritional needs. It takes time, dedication, and plenty of research to get the maximum benefit out of glucose monitoring. So if this doesn't sound like you, then this isn't going to be the product for you. What I'm trying to say is that there's absolutely no point knowing what your glucose levels are if you're not going to act on them. Pro riders who have a whole team of nutritionists to analyze the data that the device can provide, along with strategies to try different fueling regimes for both on and off the bike. For many competitive athletes, this data is absolutely invaluable and takes the guesswork out of what works for them and what products they should be fueling with. On the other hand, there's a lot of research that you could do yourself in this regard. The Supersapiens guides have taught me a huge amount about nutrition and fueling, and while it is all in one handy place, much of this information is available for free elsewhere on the internet. If you are really committed, then a cheaper alternative would be to start a diary for every ride, noting your rate of perceived exertion, what you ate both before and during the activity. But that said, Supersapiens does remove a lot of that guesswork from this process. If you're only interested in Supersapiens for cycling, then I'd recommend forgoing the energy band, which is just under 140 quid, and trialling a short sensor membership program, which is £130 every 28 days. It's not personally a product that I could justify using year round, far from it. But I can see the benefit of using it for, say, the 10-week period or so, and then leading up to target events. Overall, I'm torn on how useful the Supersapiens device would be over a sustained period. I think that as long as you're prepared to try different things and put in the time and effort to learn about nutrition, then a glucose monitor will be of a lot of benefit in the short term. That's why I'd recommend trying one of the shorter subscription plans of £130 for 28 days. You can expect a steep learning curve and good value for your money. With longer plans though, I think you'll likely experience diminishing gains, as you'll soon collect all the low-hanging fruits, as it were. Are you tempted to buy a Supersapiens glucose monitoring device? Let us know down in the comments section below. If you like this content, then please give us a like and subscribe to the channel for more reviews just like this. We'll see you next time.